Hello everyone, and today we will discuss operating cycle, which is a kind of mechanism to calculate or estimate the working capital requirements of a business. So we have already discussed that starting with the word financial management, which constitutes three important decisions, that is the decisions regarding investment, financing, and dividend. And we have also discussed in earlier sessions that investment will either be with the long-term perspective, which gives the profit desired by the business or the investment, and the inherent short-term investments, which are required, important to maintain the long-term requirements or long-term investment opportunities. जो लॉन्ग टर्म अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं वो तभी फिजिबल हो पाएंगी जब शॉर्ट टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट अच्छी तरह से रहेगी. इस लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट को हम लोगों ने नाम दिया कैपिटल बस्टिंग और शॉर्ट टर्म को हम लोगों ने नाम दिया था वर्किंग कैपिटल मैनेजमेंट. So this word working capital management itself justifies that we have to learn how to optimize the working capital because we believe that these short term investments are not made primarily to generate the profits, but they are made to just supplement the requirements of the long term decision. So there should not be any over investment because that over investment will result in the blocking of funds with no returns available as such, or the returns are much less than what you're expecting. And if it is under, that is, you have invested less than what was desired, then it will hinder the capital position decision and it may not cause result in the desired profits. So how this working capital shall be measured? So we have in the earlier session of working capital, we have already discussed what working capital is. That is the gross view, which is equal to the current assets. That is the net view, which is equal to current assets minus current liabilities. And because the current assets were primarily the inventory, the debtors, and the cash and bank balance, and the current liabilities were primarily creditors and the payables. Therefore, the total inventory of raw material, work in progress, and finished goods, along with the receivables, which may either be debtors or bill receivable, or the cash, which can either be hard cash or bank balance. They will constitute the current assets, also known as the gross working capital, and out of that, we will deduct the creditors, the bills payable, and the other expenses payable such as overheads and the labor. And when we deduct them, then we will arrive at the figure of the net working capital. And this estimation of working capital can be done through the concept of operating cycle. So how, or we should say, what is this operating cycle and how it is calculated and how. तो यहाँ नोटिस करो पहला होता क्या है, इसकी डेफिनेशन, इसका मतलब, इसका कॉन्सेप्ट, इसकी कैसे मेजरमेंट होती है, और जब आप इसकी मेजरमेंट को समझ जाएंगे तो इसकी मेजरमेंट से वर्किंग कैपिटल की कैसे मेजरमेंट होती है वो आप खुद ब खुद आपको नजर आना शुरू हो जाएगा. तो हम शायद उसे अगले सेशन में कवर कर लेंगे. इस सेशन में ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल का मतलब को भी जब तक मतलब समझ नहीं आएगा उसे मेजर करने का कोई लॉजिक भी समझ में नहीं आएगा. So what basically operating cycle is? So when we use the word operating cycle, it basically denotes the cycle of the cash to begin with and to end with. What it implies that obviously you will start the business with cash, either it is cash in hand or through bank, doesn't make a difference. And this cash will be utilized to acquire the raw material, because once you acquire the raw material only then the production will start. But obviously this raw material has to be converted to finished goods, and this journey of conversion of raw material to finished goods has to pass on through the intermediate product, that is work in progress. So you incur the cost of raw material, you incur further labor and overheads to arrive at a semi-finished stage. And once you arrive at the semi-finished stage, it is just intermediary to arrive at the final figure of finished goods, which will again require further labor cost and the overhead cost. And once you achieve these finished goods, you will go for their sales. But this sales, if in cash, will generate directly the conversion of the goods into the sales. So here, if it is a cash sales, then the journey of cash comes back again to its original. That is, the cash spent earlier should be enhanced because of the profits generated. But if this sales is on credit, if this sales is on credit, then there will be an intermediary which can either be in the form of the debtors, or certain debtors must have provided the bill receivable, which can be a sort of liquidity, or we should say they will reduce in a way the liquidity, or say the negotiable problems of the vendor for a particular period. And once these debtors and bill receivables are created, then they will be converted into cash, but it will be delayed. So the credit sales will delay the conversion of cash into cash. It means more and more items, if sold on credit, will delay their conversion into cash, but the production has to be maintained continuously. Therefore, if more goods are sold, or sorry, if more goods are sold on credit, then the business will require more cash. It means higher credit sales shall require more liquidity or more working capital. So एक बेसिक समरी ये बनती है कि जितनी ज़्यादा आपकी क्रेडिट सेल्स होगी, और करंट बिजनेस टाइम्स में जहां होलसेलर को क्रेडिट पर ही माल बेचना पड़ता है, will always result will always result in high working capital. And this high working capital will obviously increase the financial cost and will decrease the net profit. May not decrease the operating profit, but they should, we can say कि इस हाई क्रेडिट सेल्स से हो सकता है कि आपके ऑपरेटिंग प्रॉफिट बढ़े, बट फाइनेंशियल कॉस्ट बढ़ने से आपकी जो नेट प्रॉफिट्स है वो कम हो जाएंगे. दैट इज व्हाई सम पीपल व्हेन दे मेक अ क्रेडिट सेल, then that is at a price which involves this financial cost, and therefore if someone offers to buy on cash, then they are given cash discount. So instead of selling the goods at a higher price on credit, we have a price which is normally applicable for the credit sales, and that shall include the expectations of the increased financial cost into the profitability of the vendor. And therefore, if a person is buying into cash, then they are given a certain cash discount. That is, these increased enhanced financial cost included in so-called selling price are taken off, and the product can be sold on cash at a discount, which prompts the buyer to buy more or pay early so that he can enjoy the benefits of cash discount. But that is a trade policy which we at the moment are not going to stress on. So here, the conversion of cash to cash is what you call operating cycle. And we believe that faster this conversion is, earlier your cash will come back into your hand. It means lesser will be your working capital requirement. तो अगर ये ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल छोटी होगी तो कैश की रिक्वायरमेंट कम होगी, वर्किंग कैपिटल की रिक्वायरमेंट कम होगी, फाइनेंशियल कॉस्ट कम हो जाएगी, और आपका जो नेट प्रॉफिट है वो बढ़ जाएगा. and therefore this operating cycle is denoted with the efficiency of the performance. Why so? Because we believe that if raw material are acquired as early as possible, यानी कि परचेज की एफिशिएंसी अच्छी होनी चाहिए, जल्दी खरीदोगे, एक सिस्टम से खरीदोगे जल्दी जल्दी, तो परचेजिंग के अंदर टाइम कम वेस्ट होगा, जल्दी रॉ मटेरियल आएगा। प्रोडक्शन स्पीड से होगी तो जल्दी वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस बनकर फिनिश गुड्स में कन्वर्ट होंगे, जल्दी गुड्स बनेंगे और उसके बाद अगर आपके प्रोडक्ट की डिमांड अच्छी होगी तो वो जल्दी बिकेगा, और क्रेडिट सेल्स कम से कम होगी, या अगर क्रेडिट सेल्स है तो क्रेडिट सेल्स का जो पीरियड है, जो आपका क्रेडिट पीरियड है, वो जितना कम से कम होगा उतनी जल्दी कैश कन्वर्ट होगा। इसीलिए ये जो कन्वर्जन है रॉ मटेरियल का टुवर्ड्स वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस एंड द फिनिश गुड्स is what you call raw material conversion period. वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस का जो कन्वर्जन है फिनिश गुड्स में, we use the word WPCP, that is work in progress conversion period. और फिनिश गुड जितनी जल्दी बिकेंगे, we use the word finish goods conversion period. और डेटर्स जितनी जल्दी पे करेंगे, तो अगर पूरी कैश की सेल्स होगी तो जो डेब्ट कलेक्शन पीरियड है वो निल हो जाएगा, या अगर क्रेडिट सेल्स है भी तो जितना उनका पीरियड कम होगा तो उसे बोलते हैं डेब्ट कलेक्शन पीरियड। ठीक है, तो ये चारों का जो टोटल है दैट शुड कॉन्स्टिट्यूट योर टोटल ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल। बट सम पीपल से that as you are selling the goods on credit, then for others you shall act as the buyer, so they will have to sell the goods on credit. So this purchases can either be cash or on credit. So if there are credit purchases, then the requirement of the cash will be reduced. Similarly, these labor and overheads can either be paid in cash or there can be delayed payment. So if there are delayed payments in correspond to the credit collection, so you can always say that workers and the other expenditures are paid partially and some will be delayed depending upon the credit collection. Then it will also reduce the cash requirement for the business. So we say that the payment which you enjoy is paying off your creditors is what you call creditors payment period, and what delay in payment is made for the labor, that is the labor payment period, or the overheads is the overhead payment period. They will reduce your operating cycle and the working capital requirement. Therefore अगर यहाँ से, तो अगर आपने इन सबको आपस में प्लस किया था, तो इनमें से अगर माइनस कर देंगे क्रेडिटर्स पेमेंट पीरियड या लेबर पेमेंट पीरियड या ओवरहेड्स पेमेंट पीरियड, then you will arrive at the figure of net operating cycle. और जितनी ये नेट ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल लोअर की जगह मैं वर्ड लिखता हूँ शॉर्टर होगी, it will call या it will suggest high efficiency in business and low working capital requirement. So our focus with this discussion, if you believe and see from here, that will focus only on the calculations of these 5 aspects because they are showing the efficiency of the business. These two are also part of the game, but they are normally very short liability, so they are normally provided directly in the question. So if we come to the first case, that is raw material conversion period, then this raw material conversion period is equal to the year. Now you can take the year obviously as 1 year, which will be equal to 12 months, which can be equal to 52 weeks, or which can be equal to 365 days. So you can calculate the conversion period in days, and if that is so, then we will take 365. If you want to calculate them on weeks, then we can calculate we can take 52. If you calculate in month, then we can take 12. And if you take 1, then we will calculate in year. And we divide this by the raw material turnover ratio. And this raw material turnover ratio is equal to total cost of raw material consumed divided by the average stock of raw material. So this average stock is always equal to opening stock plus closing stock divided by 2. So this formula will come out to be how that अगर यहाँ इसको डिवाइड करेंगे तो RMCP will be equal to average stock of raw material divided by the cost of raw material consumed multiplied by, if we take the days, that is 365, and that just denotes the raw material conversion period. Similarly, if we go for the work in progress conversion period, that similarly it will be equal to now 365 days upon May work in progress turnover ratio, and therefore this will be equal to average stock of work in progress divided by the cost of production. तो अगर आपको कॉस्ट शीट का आइडिया है तो कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन वहां से निकालने आपको सिखाई जा चुकी पहले कॉस्ट शीट के चैनल पे, वहां से आप देख सकते हैं, मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 365 and that will denote the work in progress conversion period. Similarly, if we go to finished goods conversion period, then it should be equal to 365 upon finished goods turnover ratio. And that we have been discussing from the 12th class, that this will be equal to like the above case, that यहाँ ऊपर क्या आता है, cost of goods sold, and upon में क्या आता है, average stock of finished goods. And keeping this value here, this will come out to be that average stock of finished goods as divided by the cost of goods sold and multiplied by 365, and that will constitute your finished goods conversion period. Similarly, on the same lines, if we go for the debt collection period, then it will be average debtors, that is receivables, upon my total credit sales. So it will not be total sales, that is credit sales. It means this will be equal to total sales minus cash sales and multiplied by the 365. Similarly, अगर कैश और बैंक बैलेंस दे रखा होगा डायरेक्टली, अगर यहाँ होगा क्रेडिटर्स पेमेंट पीरियड, सो अब ये डेटर्स की जगह ऊपर क्या आ जाएगा, एवरेज क्रेडिटर्स, और ये आ जाएगी टोटल क्रेडिट परचेजेस, एंड दैट टू मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 365. तो आप इस तरीके से RMCP निकालेंगे एज गिवन अबव फॉर्मूला, वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस CP निकालेंगे एज गिवन इन द अबव फॉर्मूला, डेब्ट कलेक्शन पीरियड निकालेंगे, फिनिश गुड्स कन्वर्जन पीरियड निकालेंगे, एंड दैट विल कंस्टिट्यूट द टोटल ऑपरेटिंग साइकिल. यहाँ से माइनस करेंगे क्रेडिटर्स पेमेंट पीरियड, और अगर लेबर पेमेंट पीरियड और ओवरहेड्स पेमेंट पीरियड प्रिस्क्राइब्ड है क्वेश्चन में, तो उनको भी माइनस करने के बाद we will arrive at the figure of net operating cycle. So this way we will estimate and calculate the operating cycle of the business, and based on this net operating cycle we will estimate the working capital requirements of the business. Now, how those working capital requirements will be estimated, that we will discuss in another session on the same topic, because that will intermingle the two items. So if you will see from here, all the ingredients to calculate these periods will be given directly. You have to just learn these formulas, and for learning that you need to understand those formulas, that they have come from the turnover ratios, and therefore once you do that, it just value filling, and once you do that, you will arrive at the figure of operating cycle. So we will, or we can have separate questions, and they are quite similar. So we can have either question on the operating cycle calculation, or we can have the question on working capital estimation. And normally in दोनों में से एक question is a surety in exam. So I hope you are now well versed with the topic, and we hope that you will remember this in our next, for our next session, when we will use all these formulas to arrive and estimate the working capital based on operating cycle. On this note, myself Deepak Gupta, logging off from this